Oh boy, we're finally back to Rance after over 8 months. Not Sengoku Rance, mind you, although that will be coming out really soon, but a remake of the first game to start this franchise over 30 years ago. It has been a long time. Zirin here, back again with another visual novel primer. This time we'll be taking it back from the 8th game of this series, all the way back to the very beginning, to Rance's very first adventure, the Quest For Hikari. Well, a bigger, better version of it, cause Rance 1 is pretty ass by today's standards. Primers are, as always, introductions to a visual novel, where the focus is to introduce the visual novel's background, plot, and gameplay to an interested newcomer. Some personal tips and opinions will be at the end if you want to come in extra prepared, or just want to hear my thoughts. Manga Gamer did announce that they're bringing this game to the West, so look forward to that, non-Japanese reading fans. If you're watching this by the time it's in English, everything I say here will apply to that version as well. Since it's Rance, of course there's going to be 18 plus content. Although the video itself won't have any explicit content, I'll show off as much of the funny stuff as I can. I recommend playing it regardless because it's a decently fun and polished game. I mean, are you listening to this music right now? I already went over in detail about this in my Rance Quest primer, so I'll just link that in the top right corner if you want the long version. To make a long story incredibly short though, Rance is the over 25-year long-running Arok series about the titular character Rance, and his many journeys across the continent. He's a hero whose sole motivation is not to save humanity or to defeat evil, but to have sex with all the beautiful women in the world, whether to be commoner or queen, human or demon. Rance 01 is a modern remake of the very first game in the series, which came out way back in 1989 on the glorious machine known as the PC-98. At this point in the Rance timeline, Rance at the young age of 18 has become an adventurer under the Keith Guild thanks to Keith Goad, his benefactor. He has also just purchased silk from a slave trader right before the events of this game. The original Rance 1 was a classic adventure RPG game, in the same vein as Snatcher, where you run around using look, speak, touch options on everything, except Rance has the unique attack option. Some games stand the test of time. This one doesn't. It's absolutely dated with hilariously bad art, which I still get a chuckle out of, some chiptunes that are alright, and a combat system that barely functions. Today's visual novel RPG Rance 01, on the other hand, is a complete remake of this game, which manages to stay incredibly faithful to the original while still updating it for a modern audience. Which, again, isn't hard considering the original one is ancient. All the main story events are still entirely intact, with a couple of new characters in this new version of the game to better connect it with the rest of the series. They even managed to keep the whole adventure game aspect of it. All existing characters have either received a visual remake or a visual redesign, along with an entirely new combat and dungeon system unique to this game. Regardless of whether you played the original or not, I check it out. Music is fantastic, combat is actually pretty fun and decently challenging, and most of all, it's just cool to see all these Rance 01 characters unique to this adventure. Here's the quick summary. Rance receives a quest from Keith, the guild leader, to investigate a case where the daughter of an aristocrat, Hikari Blanc, has been kidnapped by an unknown figure in the capital city of Lizazu. Incidentally, there's also been a series of young girls being kidnapped over the past few years, with Hikari being only the latest victim. Together with his newly acquired slave, Sil, Rance will snoop, investigate, and assault his way through the city as he discovers what happens to the missing woman. As befitting of a first game, Rance's first adventure is pretty simple overall. That said, the remake revamps the combat in a major way, so we'll get into that. We'll start by covering the adventure portion first though, which remains mostly the same. In Rance 01, you'll be investigating into the case of the missing girl Hikari. In order to do that, you will be constantly moving from place to place. At every location, you will also be given the opportunity to investigate in one of 5 ways. Looking at things, speaking to people, touching objects, moving around, and finally Rance's special, randomly attacking things, whether they be objects, chairs, or people. Essentially, what it boils down to is that you have to bounce between locations, which slowly unlock as you progress in the game, and exhaust your investigative options. Due to this part of the game, Rance 01 isn't something you can play without being able to read Japanese, as you do have to pay attention to figure out where you should go next in the game. There'll be plenty of times where in order to get further in your investigation, you have to be holding on to a certain item when visiting a location, dungeon, or talking to somebody. There are plenty of extra side quests to do in this game as well, aside from the main Hikari investigation. The main hub area where you'll spend a good amount of your time has some standout locations, which are the weapon shop where you can purchase new weapon and armor chips, the item shop for item chips, the level up area where you can level up after getting enough EXP, the academy where you can meet up with Sil to full heal yourself or recover from alignments, and finally the inn where you can rest the next day, as well as store your extra chips. This game also has a time system where different shops open and close at different times during the day. Next up is dungeon diving. In Rance 1, you adventure through dungeons in this weird pick a card system. Basically, you can pick any card one space from you. These cards consist of various events that will happen to the player. First off, we have the white cards which do nothing, the blue cards which indicate an event that will occur, purple trap cards which will hit you with a negative alignment ranging from not being able to see your HP, to being able to select the next card, to just taking damage, green cards which indicate traveling to a new location or floor, and golden cards, which are cards with positive effects, ranging from treasure chests with items, to free heal points with the creepy Alice doll, and glowing Rance cards. Finally, red cards are the battle cards, which indicate an enemy encounter. Once you access a card, that card will be revealed during future revisits. Also, every dungeon has a set amount of cards that will loop after a while. Lastly, let's tackle combat, which uses the chips I mentioned earlier. You can hold a set amount of chips in your inventory, which initially starts at 5, but grows as you increase in level and do side quests. These chips include literally everything: weapons, healing items, quest items, you name it. Each turn, you can see what your opponent plans on doing, with the red chip indicating their estimated attack power, and the blue chip indicating their estimated defense power. And if you attack without selecting any chips, you do about 1 damage. There are 3 types of chips in Rance 1. Red chips are equipment items, which include both attack and defense. These red chips all have a set amount of cooldown turns before they can be used again. These cooldowns persist between combat encounters, so if I use a 5 cooldown hammer during this turn and win the battle, the start of next battle will still be on a 4-turn cooldown. Brown chips are disposable chips, which include literally everything else in the game, ranging from disposable attack or defense items, to healing items, to permanent upgrade items, which I'll talk more about in the tip section, and yes, even quest items. These can all be thrown at your opponent at any time, so be careful about tossing important items, as you can easily miss side quests by throwing an item at the enemy and never getting it back. Finally, green chips are the non-disposable companions, which you have limited access to as you proceed through the game. They enter and leave your party rarely, so don't really worry about them. Ideally, you want to have a good mix of many low cooldown chips for random encounters, and a few high cooldown hard-hitting chips for boss battles and hard encounters. Anytime during adventuring, you can access the camp menu. Here you can see your HP, which increases by 40 every level, your luck stat, which determines how likely you are to crit, your EXP, which is stored until you visit a level up shop, and your gold. You can also see any skills you currently possess, any bad status effects you may be suffering from, and finally what your current objective is. Most importantly of all, in the bottom left corner, you can choose to return to town at any time unless you're suffering from the lost bad status effect. You can even run from battle with the same button, however you lose a tiny portion of your cash if you do so. And that should cover about all the basics to get started right away. However, if you want to hear some really helpful tips I learned from some mistakes I made, and my opinions of the game itself, stick around. Due to the nature of how everything is easily thrown at an enemy for more damage or defense in Rance 1, it is quite easy to toss important items without really noticing it. Many quest items can usually be found again and again, however, everything else is fair game. With that in mind, I'll be focusing on a few important optional items. I'm not going to go over all of them, as most side quest items are fairly obvious in that you obtain it from an event where Rance directly talks about how to use it. But here's the ones that, well, aren't. Aliceman coins are permanent upgrade items which you receive from the level up Lady Willis starting from level 13, and every subsequent 3rd level after that. In order to use them, however, you need to first put it into your inventory, then venture outside of town until you reach the Holy Shrine. If there is an Aliceman coin in your inventory when you hit this event, Aliceman will show up and let you learn one of his 6 skills. These skills from top to bottom are one-shot kill, increases critical hit damage, super regen, heals 15% max HP between battles, strong lower body, allows you to move at 0 HP even after running into a death trap, healthy immune system, lowers duration of ailments, Battle Lover, 20% EXP buff, and Miser, 20% gold buff. Pick the super region first and always, as it's ridiculously important to making progress in the game. After that, it's whatever you want, as the rest of the skills aren't as important. The other 2 items I want to highlight is first this Iron Fence, which allows you to upgrade your storage capabilities permanently by adding another row. You can use it by having it in your inventory and accessing the option while at the inn. Finally, there's the Omega Elixir, which you can get from British, a legendary hero who's stuck in a wall. I point this out specifically because you get it from him early on, but in order to access the related side quests, you have to talk to a rat in the castle quite a bit later in the game with the Omega Elixir in your inventory. As to how you're supposed to know this, no idea. The game never really reveals that point, which is weird since they do a good job of at least hinting at every other side quest. Aside from those two, the rest are fairly obvious. At any point in Rance 1, you can always look at the camp menu to see your current objective. If you're still stuck after that, you can just do the good old classic adventure game thing of just talking to everyone you can. Anytime you exhaust your dialogue options, the text will go from white to red, so from that point on you'll know anytime if something new is happening, as their text will turn white again. It doesn't take very long to run through the town very quickly. After that, whenever they have a new dialogue, it probably means they have some advice important related to the main plot or will lead into a side quest. Honestly, I haven't actually played a Rance game since Rance X came out last year, so it was quite a bit of fun for me to revisit one of my favorite franchises. When it comes to a remake of the game, this is about as good as I can imagine Alicesoft ever getting, in a sense that it stays true to what Rance 1 was at its core, which is a classic adventure RPG, which so happens to also be an eroge. It's crazy how even all the monsters which were like scribbles some drunk guy made have been lovingly recreated in all their glory for this game. Granted, a majority of them have remained as staples throughout the series, but still. In the original version, Rance was actually a lot more subdued than how we see him in future entries. Probably because at the time, there wasn't this grand plan to make a 30-year flagship series, but it was just Alicesoft trying another one of their many eroge ideas. Because of that, in the original game, while he was still an adventurer who liked sex, Rance was actually quite a bit more cruel and mean-spirited than how he is portrayed in more recent games. Granted, I'm not saying he's an entirely different character, just so you definitely see a lot more of Rance's darker elements in earlier installments. This is especially the case for Kichiko Rance. In this remake, he's gotten a bit of both, his modern bombastic personality together with everything he did in the original game. I think my favorite part of this remake is just a wild range of parody faces that Rance has throughout the story. The main artist Gyokai, who was working on the game, must have had a field day. There are a butt ton of parody references from Fist of the North Star Rance, to Doraemon, to Popeye, to even Apache from Kenichi's Mightiest Disciple. It's really cute and cements Rance 01's position as a parody of the regular Japanese RPG. Does it completely take all sexiness out of an H scene? Probably, yeah. Did it make me laugh? 100% definitely. But really, for me, Rance H scenes have never been about the whole sexiness aspect, but more of a comedic and story element to the game. If it does it for you though, power to you. My other favorite part was just looking at all the characters who have been visually upgraded. While they certainly are all prettier, if you take a look at the original artwork for the two and compare them, you can clearly see how they upgraded on the base concept. It's also a treat to see Konami and Leah again. Leah especially before she became hopelessly enamored with Rance. While the background music selection is admittedly not the most fantastic out of the series, Royal Chaser and Infinite Chaser are both absolute bangers, one of which you're hearing right now at this moment. The whole classic adventure game aspect of Rance 01 might not exactly be for everybody, but it will be a massive nostalgia trip for those who grew up with those kind of games, and will give fresh faces a look back into a bygone era. If I were to compare it to other entries in the series, it's tough to say. It isn't better than any of the more modern installments after Rance 6, but nonetheless was still a fun little revisit that I would suggest anyone who hasn't played it already to check it out. If you enjoyed this look at Rance 01 and want to support the channel, the like and subscription and notification buttons are there as always. If you've played the game and have any idea where the song Infinite Chaser plays, please tell me about it. I've done every side quest, beat the game, and still haven't unlocked it in game. Finally, my Twitter handle will be there on the center of the screen if you want to see what I'm up to in between videos, and stick around for a status update. Hot dang, an actual video within a week? It's crazy, I know. I've been trying to keep myself to follow an actual schedule to work on these videos. We'll see how long I can keep this up for. Here's a link to another Rance video, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Laters!